I'd like to welcome everybody to the May 1st Planning Commission meeting. First thing we'll do is stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Moody? Here. Reese?
Here.
Toland?
Here.
Morissette?
Here.
Woolsey?
Here.
Hinsman? Here. Diesel?
Here. Okay, next we have approval of minutes from the April 3rd meeting.
Question?
Yes.
Well, let's do this. I'll move approval.
Yep.
And if you second it,
I'll second it.
Then I'll ask for questions or comments. Questions or comments?
Question the adjournment time, should that be from the meeting when we finished here or when we finished the workshop? I don't think it'd be out here at 8:26. Question on the adjournment time of 8:26, was that when we adjourned from chambers?
That was from the workshop.
Okay. No question. It just says
No.
adjournment at 8:26 and moved into planning commission workshop. Just, okay. That's all.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Okay, next we'll go on to public comments. If there's anybody in the audience has something they'd like to talk about, now would be the time. Otherwise, we'll move on to current items. There are no current items. That's nice. No, it's not nice. We'll move on to updates and information. The first one is going to be our housing assessment study, and Amy will give us a quick presentation on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Plan Commissioners, hopefully you found the link to our new housing study provided in your packet. I thought tonight I would just provide you with a brief overview. Council got one about a week or so ago, and I just pulled some snippets from the study to go over with you at this time. So just a little bit of background. Back last fall, 2017, the city and the River Falls Housing Authority pooled their funds and went out and hired Maxfield Research and Consulting to complete a housing needs and assessment for the city. It had a broad scope, so there's lots of detail. If you looked at the 180 or so pages, there's lots of data, lots of information to be pulled from the study. But basically, it covers everything from population projections, employment projections, current housing stock, all of those items that need to be pulled in and looked at in order to pull together a housing demand analysis. So you'll see the senior supply and demand, the special needs, et cetera, as you rolled through that report. Just a little bit of clarification. Hopefully this was clear as you were looking at it, but the market area for the study is essentially the River Falls School District. So as you read through the study, you can see it talked about primary market area. That's the area that you would see in gray. The remainder of the PMA was used quite a bit, so that's the area outside of River Falls. So those are some of the definitions and boundaries that that were used during the study. So some of the highlights, I put down strong growth projected. That's not just projected in housing, that's projected in population and employment. It seems from all of the demographics and everything that they took a look at, River Falls is on a growth projection. So there was stronger growth in our rental market than the other markets, and stronger rental growth in the city versus the remainder of the PMA as well. One of the interesting things that came from the study. We finally have numbers and confirmation. We always assumed, I think, that we were an exporter of employment and people. Typically, that would mean that, as you can see, there's 4,300 people about that leave the city every day to go work elsewhere, and just about 3,500 that come into the city to work. So interesting to have those numbers, to be able to gauge those folks moving in and out of the community on a daily basis. So 71% of jobs in the city are filled by incoming workers. And 11% of those folks that are coming in from more than 50 miles away. So all ties into the housing demand. And of course, we've heard anecdotally that our housing market has been tight. This study, of course, shows us that if we had a looser housing market, would we be able to provide some of the housing needs for some of these folks that are coming into the community and that may want to both work and live here in the future? Just a few more highlights. 51% of our housing stock is rental, which is higher than the remainder of the primary market area. Of course, we've got UW River Falls, right? But this is a key factor that from a community development standpoint, you'll hear from me again, most likely in the future. This is one of those areas that we take a look at. When half of your housing stock is rental, there can be some concerns that come with it, and how does the city manage that asset that it has in its housing stock? 45% of the housing stock is detached single-family housing. Of course, I talked a little bit about that we have the tight supply for both for sale housing stock and for rental. It was interesting that there was confirmation of the senior continuum of care services, so from an active senior adult all the way to memory care and assistance, you can find that continuum here in River Falls, which is a really good thing for a community, especially our size, to have that continuum here. They also, I believe they did phone calls with folks that work with special needs. So there's a section on that in the housing study as well. And a couple of the things that came up was that they are in need of increased staff and support services in that area, and also affordable housing for special needs folks that need to transition maybe from homelessness or from addictions, et cetera. So I pulled specifically some information on affordability. The definition of affordable housing by HUD, Housing and Urban Development, is that 30% or more of the gross income, if more than 30% of the gross income is going to housing, that is not an affordable situation for that individual or family. So that's how HUD defines it. Right now, you can see by the graph, which is a little small, but in River Falls, 51% of our renter households are cost burdened or challenged, and 18% of our owner households are. And I think it was Mr. Morissette that brought up at council meeting that that could be typically skewed because we have a higher percentage of students, young individuals in our rentals as well. So that's something to consider as you take a look at the numbers. They also took a look at affordability specifically in River Falls. And so off to the right of that bottom chart, new one-bedroom market rate rental in the city, they took a price of $900 a month. So the minimum income required for individuals to be able to afford that would be $36,000 a year. And they estimate of our rental market, just about 40% of our renters in the city would be able to afford that price point in the community. Just a couple slides on the demand analysis. So 1,518 housing units was the final number in the demand, and also then 571 senior housing units. So if you kind of take a look at those numbers, you can see there's the highest demand in the for sale area, which would be these two categories here at the 834 units. The rental demand was at 682 here, and then of course the senior housing at 571. The 1,518, the demand was projected out to the year 2030. For the senior housing, they did a projection out to 2022, so that's got a shorter projection on it. You probably noticed in the report then also, if you can take a deeper look into the demand. This is the rental housing development, so you can see it breaks it out between market rate and affordable housing, apartment style versus townhomes, and whether it's subsidized even, and then projects out the number of units that they feel that there's demand for in River Falls between now and 2030. So that was just a quick synopsis of some of the highlights. Did you have any comments or questions as you were able to review the study?
One thing that I found interesting from the council presentation by the gentleman who came from Maxfield, I can't remember his name, but he made the comment, while we all intuitively know, and this report supports it, that we need the low to moderate income housing, one of the other key things that's happening is there are a lot of people that are in what I would call entry-level homes today that are probably prepared to move up financially, but there's no stock. And so while the focus was on those low to moderate income houses, he said one of the ways to take pressure off that is to actually build the next, or the step up, I think is what he termed it in the report, the next level, you know, your second house, as you start having a family and you need more room, building those second houses, that will free up the entry level or the lower cost houses, because you can't build those as cheap as you can sell them today. So
Sure.
that was an interesting topic that I brought up that I thought I'd just share with the rest of the commission.
Go ahead.
I would just add to that, I mean, a number of what I would consider that housing stock has been converted to rental in the community too, so that tightens that level of the market as well.
Anybody else have any questions or comments about it? No? It was a good study. I mean, I think we all knew we were lacking in housing. We need more of every type, but it was good to get it in writing, and we work with every developer we can and letting them know what we need and what we're looking for, and so I think we'll continue doing that. So hopefully between them and us, we can meet all those needs.
I guess I do have one question regarding, and I don't know where we are it's been a while since my last stint on a board or committee. I was looking in here for this, maybe the scope didn't cover it in the study, but like how to prepare for, development, and including impact fees or those kind of things. Is the next logical step into looking at that and how we have that policy? And I don't know where we are with that. I don't know if we're still, using a plan with regard to impact fees and how we, set those and those kind of things. Because this is basically what's expected, but not how to
get to where we want to go.
How to deal with it. And I don't know if that's just something that we would want to, this is a tool to help us with that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm not aware that the city has done research on our impact fees. I have heard anecdotally from some developers on them. I could see that being a logical work plan item for the future. Yes, but right now, as the mayor said, I mean, I'm looking at this as a tool to provide developers if, they're coming into the area and know that there's demand, well, we can at least give them or direct them to some specifics at this time of what kind of needs we have.
Are you looking more along the lines of, like, what we're charged for impact fees enough?
That
more
or,
along that line,
or the, what, you know, we charge them for a reason, it's just
Right.
to, you know, the impact on other
what they're getting
residents
used
and
for?
so on, what they're used for
Yep.
parks, roads, et cetera, and I can't remember all of the things, you know, fire protection and all that. So, I was looking for, you know, some, maybe it talking about that, and that plays into affordability of,
Yes. Yep.
of housing as
Of the
well,
developing.
because we could talk about flat numbers that come out of a report like this, and then we have to consider those other things and what our
Okay.
policies should be about that. And I know it's controversial, so,
Oh, yeah.
you know, so that's what I was kind of,
No, and yeah.
had on my mind when I was looking at this, and I was looking for some of that
And that wouldn't be a
information.
bad thing for us as a planning commission to go over is, you know, what all those are for a, what's the word I'm looking for? For a workshop, thank you. For a workshop one night, you know, to bring us all back up to speed again on all that stuff.
So I guess I gave us more work then.
No, that's okay. And actually, this work study, the housing study fits in perfectly with what Amy's gonna talk to us about next.
Yes, if I could, if we're ready to transition to the next item. So 700 South Main, I just wanted to give you just a little bit of background. Cohen-Esrey brought this item to the council back in November of last year. And at that time, they were planning to go into a WIDA application, so Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority, for a low-income tax credit project. And the way WIDA currently has their applications set up, at least at that round, they needed some community support in order to gain points on that application, both from a financial consideration and from just the community saying, yes, we want this project. So at that time, the council had some concerns about the project and was not able to provide that support. But Cohen-Esrey went forward and submitted that application to WIDA anyway. So they were put on hold during that round of applications. Transition to 2018, and the state has recently passed legislation to provide additional funding through WIDA for these types of projects. So Cohen-Esrey is back on the table looking at that round of funding and wanted to come to Plan Commission to just have a discussion with you about the project, to be able to provide you some more information and hear any questions or concerns that you may have on it. One thing I did want to talk about is just the WIDA process. I'm not sure what this upcoming process is going to look like. They haven't developed it yet, but I know from where I worked previously that the community tends to have at times a hard time with the WIDA process. It seems to be kind of a chicken and the egg, right? So the developer knows they want to go into the WIDA process, so they come to the community looking for support, which they need on the WIDA application, and yet they're not at a point to put lots of money into project development, right? They need to see if they're going to be able to get the tax credits. So it puts the city in an awkward situation at times of having to come forward and say, yes, we want this project, but we don't have a lot of details. We have some, right? So I just wanted to provide that a bit. You know, we now have the housing study in hand, and we know that we need housing. So that's one large piece of this project. But I'll turn it over to Brian to provide you the overview. Brian Sweeney is here from Cohen-Esrey, and to walk you through the concept for your discussion tonight. Good.
Thank you, Amy. So my name is Brian Sweeney, and I'm with Cohen-Esrey Development Group, and we are based out of Overland Park, Kansas. However, I hail from a historic city across the river called Stillwater, Minnesota, and been working with Cohen-Esrey Development for the last 2.5 years. And I work in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. And Cohen-Esrey Development Group primarily works with workforce and tax credit projects. In the last 15 years, we've probably done about 50 tax credit projects, and we're currently involved in 9 tax credit projects in 6 states, representing about 1,200 new housing units coming on board. And I like to use the term workforce housing, and particularly for River Falls, that certainly is the case. I had the opportunity to look at your great housing study, really well done. And I'm just going to point out, beginning on page 139 for about 5 or 6 pages, there's a really good discussion about affordable housing, and we call it affordable workforce housing. And just really well done. And we've also done last fall, we did a market study and kind of confirmed the numbers that we see in the Maxfield study. And as it says, it's 1% or less than 1% vacancy for rental units, and in a healthy market, they say that 5% is the market. So I think River Falls needs housing, and all kinds of different housing. So what I wanted to do today, we did not receive the WIDA award last fall. And, part of that might have been that we didn't spend enough time with you all and just walking through the concept of our proposal. So here is a schematic that, how do I do this, Amy? If I wanted to forward or...
You want to roll through to the next page?
Yeah, well, I'll talk about this. So our proposal last fall was a 70-unit apartment building on 700 block of South Main, and at this point we're calling it 700 Main because that sounds pretty cool, I think. We did a schematic that you're looking at that I will admit we pushed a kind of an urban product a little bit, and while a lot of people like this, we got some feedback that there may be an interest to have a little more traditional design. We are currently, we were awarded in Reedsburg, Wisconsin, a year ago, a tax credit project, and we are doing a new construction project in its downtown, and that's what I want to forward to.
Just going to just scroll to the end. So let's
Okay.
skip down. Do you want to-
So here are 2 examples of projects we are involved in that, when I say a little more traditional style, it would be the traditional brick, as well as maybe a fiber cement like the James Hardie product, which can be a really quite attractive thing. And we wanted to get your feedback on, whether or not we went too urban chic for 700 Main, or whether something like this is more of something that you'd be interested in. Let me go to the site plan, back to the site plan. Oh, I can do that. Look at that. So here is the 1 block site plan here. Again, talking about the proposal is to have a very, we think attractive, what could be really attractive design along Main Street. And in fact, what that schematic we just showed didn't really show was we are proposing to have individual entrances on Main Street to make it, to kind of make it a little more personal, a little more connection to the sidewalk and to the street. But you'd, of course, in the back also have the elevator and the safety for that regard. And we are proposing that this be a family building, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And we laid out there in the site plan that there would be some green space for children play area, etc. We did our best to design this building to preserve some of the large trees, which I think is a great amenity on that site. And part of our discussion last fall was that both Broadway and Sycamore, as part of this project, would be finished. would be real live streets, right? And in the parking area, we show a lot of greenery, and I think we could do even a little more than what we're seeing here. So maybe I'll just leave it there and open it up for some questions. I do have kind of this a little more. Again, these designs show a little more urban style with, a little more metal siding, panels, etc. Again, versus what we could do with a little more traditional brick along Main Street. So I'll leave it there, and I know, and the purpose of this is we're not seeking any action tonight, simply to get some feedback and recommendations and suggestions and thoughts from you all. So I'm all ears.
When you came to us last fall, I don't think it was a case where the council and me didn't like it at all. It was just like you said, it was rushed, and
Yeah.
we just didn't feel like we had enough time to look at everything and do everything. I personally really like the project itself. I do prefer the more traditional brick,
Okay.
and that I think that would look really nice down there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really don't have any problems with and I think people have to realize that, what you're showing us here isn't going to be finished. This isn't going to be a finished product. You still have to go through, with the city, with the planning and
Right.
all the different, city staff and everything to get everything done to how we want it to look and done. So
Right.
yeah, I'm excited to see this happen.
How was it decided, the location of this?
Well, sometimes it gets really practical. We have a purchase agreement with the current owners of the property that go for an extended period of time, and we put some substantial dollars down to secure this site for several months here to work through this project. And it was, from our perspective, we do a lot, part of my background, I was Director of Planning and Economic Development for the City of St. Paul, so we got to work with a lot of neighborhoods and these type of infill projects. And we, as an organization, really love to work with cities and to help develop, we call them urban infill projects, and that's exactly what we're doing in downtown Reedsburg. It's a property which was the worst property in downtown, right next to City Hall. You don't have that. So that's to be.
My next question is, if our business district is at the north end, why are we putting the housing for the business on the south end? That was my question.
Okay.
So, that's just a thought.
Housing is needed everywhere. And the walk score, there is something called the walk score, which you do, walkscore.com. And the higher you put in an address and the higher the number, kind of the more amenities there are for that location. And this gets a very high walk score. Obviously, there's grocery store just across the street. And it's also, we see this as a family product. So, don't want to necessarily be next to the industrial site, industrial park, but so.
I think one of the easy answers is there's not many large parcels of land available in the city
Availability,
to build this. And this is the opportunity for you really, for both the contractor and the city to really set the tone on South Main. We did a South Main study, and we kind of said, what do we want down there? And this fits well into that plan. As far as the exterior goes, I could be comfortable with the traditional one, but as I'm sure you've done, if you drive around and looked at the Girard project on East
Right.
Cascade,
Right.
West Cascade, I'm sorry, they used a number of different building materials. In fact, I think they used some corrugated tin too.
Yeah.
So, and that looks nice. I mean, that's an acceptable thing. So, I could go either way on the design. I'm comfortable with what you've got there, or even what's proposed in the packet. I think the one question that a lot of people have, or the concern that a lot of people have, that I think it'd be good to address is how do we how do we make sure that this just doesn't become more student housing? I think that's really a question in that location. I know we're looking for families, and I know we're going to have some income qualifications, and I don't think you could keep students out totally. And you might get some grad students in there, for instance, and that'd probably be okay. But how do you do that without turning it into more of a student housing, which leads to another conversation that we've had about parking today. Based on what you're proposing, I think you exceed the parking requirements for the city, which is great. But we have a lot of parking issues in the city where over time, a 3-bedroom apartment's got five residents in it now because there's college students in there and they each have a car, and it turns into be a problem. So I guess I'd like to hear some comments or thoughts around that if you could.
Sometimes the WIDA process isn't always easy. However, they're helping us in this particular point because students aren't allowed.
Okay.
As part of the rules of the road. And as you say, there may be a married couple with 2 kids. One works, one is a graduate student or part-time graduate student, and that may happen.
Yeah.
But students aren't allowed.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
And my concern, or question at least, might be more for the city, Amy. What happens to our connecting streets? I think it was Broadway to Church. Is that what we decided?
Yeah, that was one of the things that we discussed during the South Main study, that would be an opportunity. We had discussed that, I think, with Brian when he first came in. However, this is a large development, and I think one of the big questions would be, or has been, if Church connects to Broadway, it leaves a small chunk of property, and what does that become? Does that just become park? Because it's not large enough to develop. We had those discussions as well. So this is the proposal that came forward that does not include that connection.
So then we lose that opportunity for good.
Yes.
I hate, go ahead.
From just a thought, Susan, is, every project comes with a lot of pluses and maybe a few
Drawbacks.
Yeah.
I don't want to say negatives, but drawbacks. That would be one of them. That was one of the thoughts I had as well. But I think when you look at the pluses and the opportunities on this one, I'm willing to, we've got an opportunity, and as we talked when they came in front of the council previously, we've got an opportunity to actually make Sycamore a real street in that section. It's dirt right now.
Yeah.
And clean up some other things down there. I think the benefits to the city far outweigh the drawback. Although that's a big one. I would have liked to seen that too, but maybe Brian can make a little under the road. Maybe he can build it up and put a little causeway underneath or something.
Sure.
Sycamore becomes a real street, but it still has no place to go.
Well, it goes down to Broadway.
And then we have the additional 70-plus people trying to get out on Broadway
Right.
onto South Main.
Right.
So we're just exacerbating a really bad situation already.
I don't want to step on Amy's toes, but I think down the road, the planning is also to take a look at extending roads farther south that may connect across. So Foster
Yeah.
would maybe come through and become a light, so it'd be behind Windmill Place. So, long range.
Brian, can you tell me more about, I'm not terribly fond of how this straight brick building doesn't have a lot of break from the street or the sidewalk, no trees or things, but you talked about individual, entries.
You can, there are trees actually there, and it's just, we're not able to see it just on this. It's just not clear. But we want to make it so it's landscaped and, has a warm presence.
In
on the
between the
street.
sidewalk and the building, you're looking
Yes.
at something
Yeah.
that
Yes.
makes me feel better already.
Oops.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So can you say more about the individual entries?
Sure. Since it's on the street, there's not steps up to, but it just would, well, there'd be.
Doorways.
Excuse me?
Doorways?
Oh, sure, yes.
Are there
individual doorways.
any recesses? Are the doorways recessed at all?
Yeah, yeah.
And that'll be all stuff that, it'll go through our planning process and design and all that stuff. We'll look at all that when, if they go forward with this project.
I'm assuming that you have to have some type of stormwater runoff. And I
Right.
see on the north end where you've got potential detention area.
Right.
Excuse me. So is it safe to assume that East Park Street will become a detention area?
They'll have-
I think you might be able to tell on that site plan concept that that area is a little fuzzy up there. I think that might have been done because we're not exactly sure.
But doesn't it need to have stormwater runoff someplace with all that surface?
Of course, their stormwater will need to be taken care of on site now, whether you're planning a basin to the north or under the parking lot. I mean, there's different options, so I'm not sure if you've gotten that far or not, but it would
we
need to
haven't.
be.
But
Okay.
clearly, we need to do that, understand that, yeah.
Is there a basement?
No,
So it's like a slab and then
right,
4 stories?
correct.
Okay.
Back to the Park Street thing for a second, Lisa. I think the intention has been, at least the indications that I've gotten from staff, and I hope I'm not speaking out of school, but I think our intention has always been that Park Street would be vacated as part of this process, and providing access to the houses that are there off of Sycamore would be the way to go. So that's probably the most likely spot for the for the retaining pond. But again, I think that's probably step 36 and we're on step 4, so.
Yep. Any other questions from anybody? Comments, concerns?
There's just one regarding how the property is managed. I mean, as far as
Yeah.
who does that, and you could speak to that.
Sure. So Cohen-Esrey manages approximately 7,000 units in many states. So it's something we do, and we're pretty good at. So,
Okay.
yeah.
It's not that you're going to build the project and then at some point turn it over to some other management.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you won't be doing that. Okay.
Wasn't there some conversation, Brian, with the housing authority in town about maybe some discussions, preliminary as they might be, and maybe the housing authority providing some support for that too?
Yeah. We did have, as part of last fall's discussion, the thought that once the building is built and the building is filled up and that we are open to a discussion that the housing authority could manage this.
Sure.
So that was part of last fall's discussion, and we're open to that. So,
Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Brian.
thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much, appreciate it.
So I get one quick question is,
Yes.
so what's the next process for you guys? Just waiting to see if the WIDA grants come through?
So, this is kind of the design discussion,
Yeah.
and we will begin to engage again more formally with Buddy and staff regarding kind of the development agreement understanding.
Yeah.
So that's next steps, and we expect that an application will be due in late June. WIDA is punching up its criteria for this, and we think it's going to be mid-May when we will know about it, and then they're saying submission in late June.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
sure. Thank you.
Okay, let's see, next we'll go on to the next planning commission meeting will be June 5th.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am? There you are.
There may be potential for a special meeting on November 15th.
November 15th?
May 15th, sorry. Wow, I jumped ahead.
May 15th?
May 15th. If you could just pencil that in,
Okay,
I'm hopeful we may know if that's going to happen for sure, maybe by tomorrow. And
from today.
we can let you know.
Okay,
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and we will go upstairs again for the workshop. All right. Well, that was relatively painless. That was
Know what the special meeting's gonna be about?